All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Ever look out your window, see someone lingering on the street, and get that tiny, undeniable prickle of intuition that something just isn't right? Well, today we're going to learn how elite security analysts separate everyday, benign human activity from covert pre-operational reconnaissance. It's a super fascinating and honestly somewhat sobering look at the subtle ways people hide in plain sight to gather critical intelligence.
Here's a quick look at how we're breaking things down today. We'll start with decoding covert surveillance, move into the digital disguise and using innocent props. Then we'll hit mobile reconnaissance tactics, escalation, and pattern recognition, and finally wrap up with threat assessment and response.
Okay, Section 1. Decoding covert surveillance, separating routine from reconnaissance.
So picture this. You look outside and see someone pausing near your driveway with a camera. Your immediate, polite human instinct is probably to just dismiss it entirely, right? You don't want to be paranoid, but you really have to ask yourself what their true focus actually is. Are they just grabbing a nice picture of the sunset, or are they carefully, methodically documenting the exact model of your security gate?
And that brings us to the crucial concept here, behavioral camouflage. Basically, it's a deliberate technique that lets an individual legally occupy a public space, like your neighborhood sidewalk, while secretly executing reconnaissance behaviors. By doing something that looks completely normal, they give themselves a totally socially acceptable excuse to linger, observe, and map out a target without ever triggering the natural threat radar of the people around them.
Because when someone is really effectively using behavioral camouflage, they aren't just looking around randomly. They are highly focused. They've got a specific checklist of physical and environmental vulnerabilities they're actively trying to assess. We're talking mapping out entry and exit points, checking if windows are open or half open to test perimeter security. They're tracking room lighting to gauge the exact moments when residents go to sleep or wake up, and monitoring parked vehicles to figure out precisely who is currently home at any given hour.
Moving right along to Section 2, the digital disguise, concealing intent with technology.
There's a sharp, noticeable contrast between regular, distracted walking and calculated surveillance. Just think about how you naturally walk when you're texting a friend. Your head is aligned with your phone, your eyes are down, and you're moving at a normal pace. But in a documented incident from June 1st, a subject used a fake phone call as an excuse to loiter. While their phone faced the street, their head was cranked at a sharp, highly unnatural 90-degree angle, maintaining this prolonged, unbroken gaze directly at a property's access points. The phone was quite literally just a prop to justify their incredibly slow pace.
Oh, and here is another brilliant tactic from a June 17th security report. A subject stood directly beneath a CCTV camera, essentially hiding perfectly in its blind spot, taking what looked exactly like a casual reverse selfie. But analysts noticed the phone's high magnification capability was fully engaged. They were actually using a 20x zoom right over their own shoulder to meticulously document the specific tiny details of security hardware, boundary walls, and complex locking mechanisms way in the background.
Let's jump into Section 3, using innocent props, pets, babies, and exercise. Once you know what to look for, the anomaly becomes completely obvious. Take an incident on June 3rd, where an individual was observed walking a dog late at night. A normal dog walker keeps an eye on their pet, right? They make sure they don't trip in the dark. But this particular subject, they stared at a residential entrance door for so long, with their head totally locked on the target, that they entirely ignored the physical hazards directly under their own feet. They walked straight through muddy potholes, loose pebbles, and uneven road humps. Their sole priority was mapping the target, completely ignoring their own physical safety.
What we're dealing with here are what security analysts call physical displacement behaviors. Conducting active, hostile surveillance while pretending to do something innocent requires a massive amount of brainpower, and that intense cognitive load literally leaks out in weird, involuntary physical ways. For example, a June 5th report noted a person carrying a newborn baby. But instead of soothing the infant, they were tightly rolling their lips inward until they disappeared, which is a classic, primal indicator of deep stress and hyperfocus while staring intensely at second-story windows. We also see stuff like exaggerated jogging arm swings that don't match the leg pace, or an elderly caregiver choosing to pause in damp, freezing mud exactly 2 to 3 meters from a specific street-facing window. The innocent cover story simply collapses under the weight of these micro-behaviors.
All right, Section 4, mobile reconnaissance tactics, scanning on the move.
Reconnaissance can suddenly shift in tempo, escalating from passive to highly aggressive in a flash. Check out this timeline from June 19th. A subject started with a slow, meticulous pedestrian observation of a perimeter wall, but less than an hour later, they returned with an accomplice on a scooter. They executed this highly erratic, completely distracted U-turn right at the vehicle gate, all while one was engaged on a phone call and neither of them were wearing safety helmets. It's a rapid, jarring shift from slow observation to a hazardous mobile maneuver. They're essentially stress-testing the boundaries and response times of the property's perimeter.
Section 5. Escalation and pattern recognition, connecting the dots.
Let's see how this actually builds by looking at a June 1st escalation. In the morning, a subject uses their phone's front-facing camera as a fake mirror, pretending to groom non-existent facial hair, while actually staring intensely at the entry gates over their shoulder. Then, exactly 14 hours later, that identical subject returns to the exact same spot, this time walking a dog, and holding a phone at an odd 45-degree angle to scan second-story room lighting. Returning at drastically different times like that? Definitely not an accident. It allows the subject to meticulously cross-reference daytime access point vulnerabilities with nighttime occupancy and sleeping patterns. That is textbook pattern building.
And this brings us to a sobering, highly clinical assessment drawn directly from a deep-dive security report on June 6th. It describes a subject who entirely stopped their walk to fixedly gaze at a distracted female resident who was simply putting on her shoes inside her home. The report states the behavior crosses the line from passive passing to active targeted stalking. When an observer starts capitalizing on a resident's brief lack of situational awareness and they return repeatedly to the exact same vantage point, it is no longer just a passing glance. The threat level fundamentally changes.
As the psychological fixation on a specific property deepens, the attempt at camouflage can sometimes completely break down into deeply bizarre escalation behaviors. Security reports have documented subjects staging violent fake Thai boxing kicks right outside a perimeter wall, performing ritualistic puja mudras or invisible flower offering gestures, making aggressive shushing signs with a finger to the lips toward empty windows, or even resorting to indecent exposure and spitting directly at a security gate. These bizarre actions act as severe displacement or signaling gestures. They often serve to subconsciously soothe the subject's massive adrenaline spikes, intentionally distract casual observers, or purposefully gauge the active reaction times of the property's human occupants and physical camera systems.
Finally, Section 6, Threat Assessment and Response. Actionable recommendations.
So what do we do about all this? Well, this structured protocol ensures that we move from merely watching suspicious activity to actively hardening the target against it. First, always preserve and review your CCTV footage to catch those critical repeat appearances. That's exactly how you establish a threat pattern. Second, immediately control your intelligence leakage. Utilize curtains and blinds so people standing on the public street cannot map out your daily routines. Third, physically and periodically inspect your perimeter vulnerabilities like gates and locks. And fourth, maintain a rigorous behavioral log. Long-term trend analysis is absolutely your best defense against pre-operational surveillance.
But hey, as objective analysts, we have to remember a critical rule. While these behavioral patterns are highly alarming, we are logging physical anomalies, not legally confirming malicious criminal intent. Someone pointing a phone at your house might be gathering sophisticated reconnaissance for a burglary, sure, or they might just be terribly lost and trying to read a street number in the dark. These are indicators of potential threats, which absolutely allow us to be prepared, but they are not absolute proof of a crime. Objectivity is what makes for truly excellent security analysis.
So keep these indicators at the very top of your mind, because recognizing that subtle shift from casual, everyday attention to hyper-calculating focus is your true first line of defense. The next time you see a dog walker completely ignoring the freezing mud they are stepping in, or someone taking a wide-angle selfie while purposefully standing in the darkest corner of the street, ask yourself, what is the real target here? Stay observant, stay secure, and thanks for joining me for this explainer.